Right, here we are. Happy New Year, Lewis. How are you getting on?
Happy New Year to you too, Matthew. I'm very well, thank you. I think you've had a haircut. I'm going to
I
put it out there.
have had a haircut. Thanks for noticing. I've had a bit of a chop and I've got these headsets on today, so probably can't see the full impact of it. But yeah, I have managed to tame the mane.
It's looking good, looking smart, mate. Yeah, obviously I've not seen you for a while, but the first thing I noticed was those locks look a little bit shorter than before.
Well, it's all part of our thing we're going to talk about today, Lewis. New year, new me. Is that
Oh, new
what we're
year, new
doing?
me.
Or
Yeah. New year, new me. You must have been on my social media this morning.
why? What were you saying on your socials this morning?
I was talking about we obviously before I've done Monday motivation, and we tend to focus on an area for a period of time, and we do it for around about 10 to 12 weeks, and then we tried to come up with some new areas. And going into the new year, I wanted to focus on Monday myths. What myths are out there, particularly in the running world, in the sporting world, even in the business world. And what I find to be a myth is this new year, new you, new year, new me. I just strongly believe that you are you. What you've done in the past has created you to where you are now. And you should always work on yourself, but you shouldn't wait for the new year to do that. I think we've discussed that in a previous podcast. In fact, we've discussed about, the day, I think you said, challenge yourself to start new habits now rather than the new year. I just don't believe that doing something on the new year and doing a short challenge is the answer to the problems that you have. I think it lacks deep motivation. And in the end, that's why so many people stop. And someone replied, Rich Blago replied to my Monday myths this morning saying, the same people who set New Year's resolutions who broke them over the weekend will have said, I'll start on Monday instead.
So do you not think it is, though, a good cue for people to have to get started in the new year? Obviously, sometimes that motivation, that first instinct, so that thing that goes wrong that causes them to try and fix it, or that comment that someone says to them about their body that forces them to think about a new way of thinking, or a performance in a race that they think that wasn't what I wanted, I want to improve. Do you not think the new year, new me, that first day of January is a good reason to start your training?
I think I agree in a sense, because I do start my new journal, my new planner on the 1st of Jan. That's because it's we're starting a new calendar year. So that's where it starts from. It's a new, fresh book. So yes, it gives me a cue to start something new. But as opposed to working on yourself in a new way and having that cue of a date, why do you need that date is the question I would ask. Why are you relying on a date for your motivation? Can you not change that so that you're always working on yourself? I think it's a really good point, though. Some people do need those cues, and we spoke about that with habits, didn't we? The different cues you put in, and that date can represent a date of change. So that's when I'm going to start. But as we've spoken about in the past, I think motivation is short-lived. I think you get up sprightly on New Year's Day or whenever it is, January the 2nd, and boom, you're out the door. I'm out jogging. But slowly that motivation dwindles, and it's because the motivation wasn't there from the outset. The motivation was the date, the new year. The motivation wasn't really coming from you. So I think you've got to delve a little bit deeper personally. That's what I believe.
So you're saying if something gets in the way of that kind of, like, obviously people break the habits quite soon into the new year, like they say dry January, and then they go for a drink with a friend and it's broken and it's ruined. But for training, is there a way to get around that? So if you do start on the 1st of January, for example, and that is your cue to start training again, but then it comes to the 10th, 11th of January and something happens in your personal life and you don't manage to find the time to train that day, how do you reframe your focus off the back of that?
That is a really good point, and something that came out in conversation with some of the athletes who I coach over the Christmas period. When races started to get cancelled again, particularly for the elites. The elites were focusing on indoor. There was an invite sent out for the British Indoor Championships, and people were starting to get a little bit excited, like, oh yes, we're going to get British Indoors. And then the news of, okay, it's probably not going to look what we thought it was going to look like. It's going to be limited invitations. People might not be able to race. Same with people with half marathons, marathons. They've had races cancelled in the new year as well. And I had that conversation with the athletes of, you're only looking at short-term goals here and short-term motivation. And for me, it should always lie in the long term. What are your long-term goals? What are your long-term motivations? They shouldn't change. So for people who've had races cancelled in January, it might be that their long-term motivation is October London Marathon. what they do in January is still going to affect that long-term goal and that long-term motivation. So it's really important that they do not lose that focus, that they continue to be motivated towards that long-term goal. So it's about coming up then with little short-term goals, reevaluating, replanning, setting yourself new targets. But whether that decision's being made on January the 1st, whether it's being made on January the 9th, I said the 9th because that's my birthday, which will bring me on to another point. I think it's really important that these obstacles that come in your way, you should look at ways to solve them. You shouldn't see that as an excuse to then stop you on your challenge.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And having something for in the future is a great way of doing things. And I know from speaking to lots of people who come to run our races, and that having that goal to come to a race and complete the race is the thing that they look forward to. But when they're not able to do that, and recently it's been COVID that's been taking those things away. Sometimes it might be weather, but it is COVID that's stopping things happening. That's ever changing. And people's goals are being changed, swapped and changed around. So now is more important than ever to find a consistent purpose throughout the year, rather than thinking on those individual race cues, because you don't know if they're going to happen or not. So if you're not motivated for these year round, you're never going to be motivated for the races that come up when they actually are able to happen again.
Exactly that. I think a really good way of looking at it as well. You've made a good point there, because so many people fall into that trap as well of like, a 16-week marathon plan or a 12-week marathon plan or a 10-week half marathon plan. And there's certain apps and training plans out there which are really good, like Couch to 5K. I think that's a great app for people who are getting into running and want to build up to 5K. In fact, I think there's nothing much better out there for that. But those plans, people who wait around and say, right, I'm going to get started now, 16 weeks until the marathon. Like, why do you only give yourself that period of time? Like, okay, we know with boxers, we both love our boxing. We know that they go into camp for 12 weeks. But that is them getting specific for that fight for 12 weeks. They're never out of the gym. They don't leave the gym and then come back and say, right, now I'm going to get cracking. And people look back at the careers of someone like a Ricky Hatton in boxing and they say, oh, well, he did. He left the gym and he put some bad habits in. But those bad habits caught up with him later on in life. And he really struggled with his mental health later on down the line, ballooned up in weight, got into drugs, alcohol. And I think people of that, almost, if that's their personality trait, then they can work on that. And had somebody worked on that with Ricky Hatton in his lifetime, then it may not be affecting him as badly, or did affect him as badly when he finished his career.
Yeah, I know Ricky Hatton was Ricky Fatten for a while. That's what he called himself.
Oh yeah, Ricky Fatten, yeah.
he ballooned up to such big weights, but like you said, not having that consistent purpose over a period of time is a problem. And again, like we both like boxing, and Tyson Fury is someone that we both like and watch as well. And watching his mental struggle over the last few years and how he ballooned up in weight, he didn't have a purpose. His purpose was to win the World Heavyweight Championship. That's what he wanted to do. He did that. Then after that, there was nothing there for him. So over the next period of months and years, he didn't do anything. He had no motivation. He had no reason to get out of bed in the morning and go for a training session. He didn't stay in the gym year round. He didn't have to do a training camp because he wasn't fighting. So there was nothing for him to do in that period of time. That's the same for anyone. And it's the same thing we're talking about now. Unless you have that purpose within you and you are a person that keeps healthy, you are a person that exercises every day, you are a person that thinks about these healthy things in your life for another reason, which may be to be a good dad, to be able to react to a situation. Like I always think of the situation where if there's on a plane and then someone starts to misbehave, or like there's someone being dangerous, and what kind of person am I? Am I the person that jumps on that person and grabs them to the ground and holds them down? And like, I want to be ready at all points in time for something to happen. If I have a child at some point in my life, then if they fall or do something, I want to be able to run as fast as I can to help that person. And if I'm not fit and healthy, I won't be able to do those things. So I always revert back to the real worst case scenario and think, am I in the right frame of mind? Am I fit enough? And that's the reason why I train. That's the reason why I do things every day. Not because I want to be faster or because I want to be excel in a certain distance like I used to do when I was younger. Now it's a purpose of be ready at all times to be fit and healthy to be able to react.
And I like the way there that you've gone deeper and deeper and deeper. You're like, oh, I want to stay fit and healthy. And then almost like visualizing, if anything ever came up, I want to be able to react to that. So I need a strong, healthy body for that. And I think that's the way you've got to look at it, is like, it might not just be a running goal, for example. It might not be just that I want to run a sub 5 hour marathon. It might be that actually I want to run a sub 5 hour marathon because that'll prove to myself and my family that I can achieve that, but also I'll feel good doing it and I'll look good doing it. And, it helps me to create healthy habits that are going to last longer than just the marathon. And then if I can keep my training in there, I'm going to become this fit, healthy individual who I want to become over time. So sometimes the time is irrelevant. Certainly for some of our goals, it is time specific, isn't it? I'm sure you've had a time specific goal. Especially when you were younger, you'll be looking at qualifying times, for example, and we just focus on those times. But often becoming too obsessed on those times can again result in failure as well.
Have you noticed with yourself or with your clients that you coach, any patterns that emerge for people that kind of drop out and no longer need coaching or no longer contact you? Is there a pattern that you can tell us?
Absolutely. So the goal one is, I think that's probably what you're alluding to, that if people don't have a race goal, or they don't have that, or that goal is taken away from them, perfect example right now with COVID, then they start to lose motivation. They start to lose it. And that's really challenging for us as coaches to keep that motivation in there. How do we keep that? So that's one of the biggest ones. Injury, of course, is another one. When people get injured, and how we deal with that as coaches. So the automatic assumption when someone is injured is that I can no longer train. But we always flip it on its head. It's like, well, what can you do? You might not be able to run, but can you swim? Can you bike? Can you still go to the gym? You work on your strength and conditioning. It might be a perfect time to do that. But you see so many people who think, oh, I can't do this now, I'm going to give up. And I wouldn't necessarily say it's giving up, but it's almost like they've been thrown an obstacle, and they choose to kind of shy away from that. And I really like the saying of, people can find an excuse not to do things when they don't want to do it. But if you really want to do something, you can find any excuse to do it and continue to motivate yourself towards that. And I strongly believe in that. If you want something deep enough, you will find every excuse to continue towards that. You and the run through team are really a good example of this. Like, there's so many race organizers in COVID who said, no, we're not going to do anything. We're just going to put our events off for a while. You guys said, no, we're going to do virtual runs. We're going to get our events back up when we can. We're going to launch our kit brand. We're going to help the community, because your deeper meaning as an event organizing company is to help a community of like-minded people to stay healthy and active. And even if you don't have races on the calendar, you have still managed to do that through virtual running, through different ways of engaging in your community. I think that is absolutely brilliant. It's a testament to what you want to achieve deep down.
Yeah, no, you're right. And thanks for highlighting that. And it is something that we do think about, having a purpose that's not just putting on a race. The purpose is, like you said, to encourage everyone to run. And these races that we put on during this time, like, we might be running at a loss in these events, but the purpose is we have to be ready for it to be on. So as soon as someone says you can do the event happens. It's not because we decide when to put these on. They are already in place. We're already booked with the venues. They're going to happen as soon as we are allowed to do it. And having that consistent mindset is something that drives us as a business. And I think as a person as well, I've struggled with that for myself, to find a higher reason for doing the exercise. But I have highlighted just there before, finding that reason to be ready at all times to train and be fit enough to do those things whenever I wanted to.
And back to boxing, I don't know if you've seen that tweet from Eddie Hearn yesterday. You know we love Eddie Hearn and everything he's about, but the British Board of Boxing Control in the UK have said that no UK fights are to take place. And someone replied saying, oh, does that mean you're going to take the fights abroad, Eddie? And he just replied saying, we will make it happen. Like, he's already looking at ways in which he can still get those fights, because his deeper meaning is to support the boxers who aren't earning money. And he has this strong belief in making people financially stable for the rest of their life. You know, he talks about getting Terry Harper her first house after she fought for a world title, and how proud he was of that moment. You know, making Katie Taylor a global superstar, but setting her up for life, and her kids and grandkids being set up for life. And he's so proud of that. And that's what pushes him on. It's not just about putting that fight on. It's not just about putting that event on. It's not just about that race. What is the deeper meaning? What is it, the deep meaning? It's to be healthy, it's to be happy, it's to enjoy your training. And that's, for me, what it comes down to.
I think when we go back to the original point of what we started on, which was like New Year, New Me, the new me part of it is something to kind of talk about, I think, because
Yeah, definitely.
like we're talking about something that we've worked out. We've worked out that we want to do these things. I've said I want to work out to be ready at all times, but other people might not want that. They might not have that 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 personality trait that can flip it and give themselves a motivation quickly. Do you have any tips on how people can find their new me? How able to find their old me, be able to find the person they actually are, to be able to find the motivation to keep on training? So yeah, that'd be really cool to hear.
We listened to a really good podcast, didn't we? And we I think we've spoken about this one before as well. Johnny Wilkinson and the High Performance podcast with Jake Humphrey, and I was fascinated by it. Like, he confused himself at parts. He confused the listener. He confused himself. But one thing that really got me thinking about, and I'd kind of touched on it before, but I'd never really understood it, was that everything you've done in your life up until now, right now, this present moment, has helped to create and shape the person you are. And that's why I don't like the saying of a new me, because I believe it's you. So I think from that moment in time, you should be working on yourself. Now, there's certain things that you may want to change about yourself or adapt. And I would look at those things as opportunities, whether it's something you see as a weakness, something as you see as a negative. I always say, see it as an opportunity to develop yourself into a better person. And now might be the time to start to do that. So you can change the old you, but it's still you. It's still you. You're developing, you're upgrading yourself. So my personal advice to people would be, have a look at the areas where you want to be better. Don't see them as negatives. Just see them as, that's where I am now. But from every moment forward, I want to be better in that area by doing the following. And you're trying to upgrade yourself.
So you're saying the way to identify these different areas is to by looking at every area of your life and then looking at ways to improve each aspect, rather than going, "Hi, my name's Matt and I like this thing." It's I am Matt and I'm a brother, I'm a son, I'm a
Absolutely.
business owner, I'm a runner, and all these different areas, and then on each area find ways that you can improve in these areas.
Yeah, so I did it myself. I did it between Christmas and New Year because I didn't want to do it on New Year. I didn't want to fall into that
On
trap.
purpose.
Yeah, on purpose. And I've done it several times throughout this year, and I keep going back to it. And I look at different areas of my life. One of them is social. One of them's family and friends. Health and fitness. One of them's like financial. The other's like travel and lifestyle. And I look and I rated myself in those areas. Where am I currently? Score out of 10. You can do it in different ways, but I did it scores out of 10, and I was prompted by something that I bought. But then I set goals in there at those areas. Where would I like to get to? What do I want that score to get to? How am I going to do that? And it makes you really think. Like, there's some areas that I've really struggled with, like spiritual and emotional. I've never been a spiritual person, never been a deep emotional spiritual person. And I really struggle with that. But then surely I should try and better myself in that area if I know it's an area I struggle with. If I want to, of course. It might be that, I don't believe in that at all, so I don't set goals in that area, but I do. And I've started to try and visualize things more, because then I backtracked and I thought, well, visualization, do I really believe in that? And I thought, absolutely, because as a runner, I used to visualize all the time. Like, and then it's like, oh, do you meditate? And we've spoken about this before. Meditation is something that people like almost laugh at. There's a bit of a stigma around it for a lot of people, including myself. I was guilty of that. But then I realized my meditation is my running and my stretching. It's meditation is just being alone with your thoughts and your breathing. I do that every day with my running and my stretching. So it's getting comfortable with that. So I would say you're absolutely bang on. Look at all areas of your life, break it down into different categories, and have a look at where you want to be better and where you want to improve.
No, it's fine. Do you have any resources you could point people in the way of, or do you think that it's just literally a case of writing down every aspect of your life and then focusing on those things?
Well, there's one resource, Matt, the top resource out of them all. It's called Runner Retreats. No, all jokes aside, but that is something, when we do go to the retreat in August, because we've moved it back to August now, just to be safe, but we will look at all areas. It's not just about running, it's about daily habits. It's about breaking yourself down, having a look at things. How can you be better as a person? But I've used two things this year that I'd say have been really useful for me. I went through I've spoken about it before. Worthy Tweaks 90-day program. They have a journal. But the one thing, in fact, I've got it with me here. I'm using this at the minute.
Yep.
So if you can see that on your screen, it's called Daily Greatness. It's something I picked up online. Originally, I believe it was developed for female business owners, but it's since developed into quite a big company, and I really like it. You know, it's to show you the amount of work it gets that you do on it. It's, you know, pages and pages of different goal setting, and every day I'm writing things in there on a daily basis. What am I doing today? I've got today, just to read you out, I've got my things to do podcast with Matt. So I've got that on there. But just writing down, like, what am I going to create today? What am I grateful for? What am I inspired to do? And I found that really useful, just having those cues.
And I do a similar thing, and I'm not as kind of meticulous as you are with it, I don't think, but I go through spells.
But you got me into this, didn't you? You showed me your version first.
Yeah, I did indeed, and it's something that I've fluttered with over the years, and I go through a spell of like 2 to 3 months, and I write everything down, and then something bad happens or something work-wise gets in the way, and I just kind of think that isn't important to me right now. I've got to focus on the actual task at hand, and that's not right. I should really reflect back and get up earlier and fill the book in and do it properly, and then afterwards reflect back on it. But the book I've got is a full focus planner, and it looks like this. And then in each page, you get asked every day your daily big 3. So list your 3 most important tasks, and then it lists other tasks you've got, and then it gives you kind of a 6 to 8 day working day you can write in what you've done. And then the page after that's got like notes, so you can write about what you've done. And then at the end of every single week, it gives you like kind of a summary of it. So it asks you what your biggest wins are, ask you after action review, so how far do you get with different things on your weekly big 3, ask you for the weekly big 3 of the week coming up, major events, deadlines, tasks. So it's prompting me to do things like the whole way through. It gives you nice little quotes and all that stuff. And nice. It is quite expensive for what it is, but you could do your own version of it quite easily by just literally looking at one of these and copying it down onto a notepad to save yourself a bit of cash. But I quite like.
That's a really good point, though.
Yeah, I like paying for things.
Say.
You do know what I'm going to say. But I do sometimes pay for things because I think I've paid for it, therefore I will put the value into it. So I'll put my time into it because it's my money that I've spent my time earning. If I can then give it to someone else or to another product, I'm going to put my time and effort into learning how that product works, or I'm going to invest in it. And these books are a way I do that.
And on that point, so, you know, mine costs 50 quid. It's not cheap for something that
similar price.
But I put a value on what it's worth to me. So I'm going to compare this because it's my biggest bugbear, as you know. I'm going to compare it to the cost of paying for coaching. And this isn't a sell for my coaching, but the cost of paying for any coaching out there compared to a free online plan that you can get. Now, most people who use a free online plan, I'm not saying everybody, but majority of people who I speak to who use a free online plan, they get it. And they eventually start it, stop it, adapt it, rip it up, put it in the bin. It does never get completed. So in terms of wasting their time, they've wasted time and money by printing it out. Might be a small cost, but they've wasted a lot of their time by not doing it. And they haven't got out of that plan what they wanted to get out of it. And that's the most costly mistake they can make. Now, if you pay for coaching, no matter how much it is, if you put yourself into that position to pay for something, personal training, one-to-one coach, online coach, you're more likely to show up and do it because you're invested in it. And once you're invested in it and you start to improve and you start to get the results that you wanted to, what's more expensive? Now, if you just say, if you're going on a monetary value, what's more expensive? Well, of course, the coaching's more expensive than the free plan. It's always going to be. But look at it from a different light. What has cost you more in terms of your energy, in terms of your achievement, in terms of what you've got out of it? Because you've got exactly what you wanted to get out of that plan by paying for it. But by not paying for it, you've cost yourself in the long run because you haven't got to where you wanted to be. And the classic example of this is when somebody pays, I think we've discussed this one before, someone pays for a tutor to help them learn a foreign language, and they learn a foreign language. Someone who doesn't pay for it goes on a free app and starts trying to learn that language themselves, never learns that language. How do I know that to be true? Because that's me. I'm still trying to learn Spanish and French from about 5 years ago.
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's one of the things that having traineeship, well, I sometimes, like you there, mentioned that I will pay for something. I'll pay for like a plan, or pay for some information that I couldn't get for free. And when I have the information, I am more inclined to read it and take it in because I have paid for it. But then again, there's another layer on top of that, which is accountability. And that can come from an individual person, or it can come from a community. Or that can come from maybe the app itself has some kind of prompt that kind of highlights it for you. My partner Lucy, she's doing a thing on app Fits that I use for my stretching, and it's 90 days. And I know it's probably something that goes against what we just talked about in terms of like New Year, New Me, 1st January, but it did start the 1st January, and it is 90 days long. But that prompt of having that app remind you every day to say, have you done your workout today? And then it giving you some kind of reward or feedback when you say you've completed it, so you can look at it and go, oh, I've done 3 or 4 days in a row. Having that, but it's the same thing as then going for a race, and then you finish your race and everyone's talking about it online, everyone's sharing their pictures, everyone's saying well done. Or it's the same thing as having a coach and you pay for their time, but after you finish your session, they'll give you feedback on your training session, feedback on your run, and you have that accountability with that person. So there's 3 ways you can do that as well. But for what we're talking about now, for kind of habits in the future and stuff, it is difficult to do that, but there is mechanisms you can pay for to kind of help with that.
Yeah, 100%. And those cues, back to what we started, the 1st of January is almost just that cue, isn't it, of getting people started. And that isn't a bad thing. Like, absolutely not. If it gets somebody started, but the discussion we had is, around if it then stops and you fall out of the habit, and then the next time you start that again is the 1st of January the following year, you probably need to reassess and have a look at things and think, this 1st of January cue, it isn't really working for me.
I also think that with like the dry January thing, and like, why do you need to stop drinking for a month? Like, well, what is it that's making you drink every single day anyway?
Yeah,
so
exactly
like,
that.
Do you need to just have a break from drinking, and that might be your reason, that might be your blocker, that might be your intervention to stop you from drinking that month, and therefore it is a fantastic thing. But if you on the 1st of February you're gagging for that pint and you can't wait to get back into that habit again, then why are you even doing it in the first place? Just being more throughout the whole month in the first place.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
100%.
So
off the back of this, we sometimes ask you guys questions and things to think about for the next time we meet up on the Runner Retreat podcast. And I was thinking maybe something to do with around this subject, around the goals that people, or the aims that people have at the start of the year that they wish they could have started at a different time. And a question around that.
Yeah, good question. Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So maybe, is there a goal that you've set this year or in previous years that you wish you'd started earlier, or would you have chosen a different time to start that goal? That's a really good question. And sometimes that involves a bit of self-reflection, doesn't it? And Johnny Wilkinson would say, no, the time was right because you chose to do it then.
Yeah, honestly,
there's no mistakes.
If you guys have the time to go to the Jake Humphrey High Performance podcast, which is a great podcast in general, I think, for the stuff that you put out there. But the Johnny Wilkinson one, if you've got like half an hour and you want to just focus on something, then focus on that, because he does go around about the houses a little bit on certain things.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But the deepness he goes into is fantastic, and it's really interesting to hear. But yeah, all right, Lewis. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year again to you. I hope you started your habits well before January 1st. So you're on my bad list.
The 31st, I started them all. Actually, no, I'll start them today. Who knows? All right, mate. We'll speak soon.
Good to chat, mate. Speak to you soon. See you, buddy.
Bye-bye.